Children's Hunger Fund grounds its desire to show mercy in God's desires in Scripture. I'm not going to go through Matthew 9 through 13, but the key verse that they pull out is God desires mercy, not sacrifice. Isn't that a great verse? Right out of Scripture. God desires his people to show mercy, so they build it on the back of that verse. And then in the first section, they talk about God's purpose and plan for history. That's under Roman numeral 2. All I really want to point out here is they just go over a theology of the whole Bible, a bird's eye view. They talk about creation, the fall, all the pieces. But one thing they point out is in the garden, Genesis 3:15, where God promises a redeemer, or as they call it, the proto-evangelion, which is the first mention of the gospel in the Bible. So in the first 3 chapters of the Bible, you see God showing mercy. And then if you look at literature, usually back then, the point or the climax of a story was in the middle of it, not at the end of it. Well, right at the middle of our Bibles, between the Old Testament and the New Testament, is Jesus coming and showing us mercy, the very plan that he had at the very beginning. And then at the end, in Revelation, you see it all culminating. God's mercy culminates in people from all nations worshiping him. And so they cover that because they want to help us understand theologically that mercy's in the Bible. We're not making this up. This isn't our preference. This isn't a preferential evangelistic style. This is one of the main ways people reach out, is through showing mercy. Section 2 is on he raises the poor. He raises the poor. I don't usually do this. I'm going to use this board for a second. So if we were to take a pie chart, and this is everybody in the world. This pie chart is everybody in the world. What percentage of people do you think make over $150,000 a year? What percentage? 1%? Okay, so that's 1%. Okay, it's 0.3%. Okay, so that's 0.3. Okay, what percentage of people do you think make above $60,000 a year? 20%, 3%. How about 0.9%? Okay, we haven't even gone off the 1% line here. How about people who make above $25,000 a year? Above $25,000 a year. This one I tricked you. This actually opened up. This is 10%. So, sorry, you're like, oh, come on. Okay. And then how about $12,000 above or above in a year? What percentage? So we'll just move it out. 12%. All I want to show you is that poverty, low-income families, things like that, is not just a monetary value. Because the government typically ascribes in the United States a certain monetary value, and if you're below that level, then you're low income or you're impoverished. And what I want to show you by this chart is, quite honestly, living in Walnut Creek, if you're making $40K, $50K, $60K, that's, okay. But in the world's standpoint, that's huge. That's huge. You're higher than you're in the top 1% of wage earners in the world, even at $60K. That's crazy. And so I just want to define poverty for you. Poverty is the inability or suffering to obtain adequate food, shelter, clothing necessary to sustain life. So that's what we're looking at. It's not a fiscal number. It's people who are unable to provide these things. There's all sorts of factors in this, and it's not just a monetary value, how much you make. Now, I want you to think about poverty. Why does poverty exist? And I'm going to do one more chart up here for you. And I'm going to put a disease. What am I looking for? Symptoms, complications, cure. Sorry for my handwriting. Okay. So we're going to take a disease, which I'm just going to pair it right off of the CHF training, which was diabetes. So diabetes is your disease. What are symptoms of diabetes? Anybody? Stroke, yeah. What else? High blood, yeah, okay. Loss of feeling, yeah. I'll also put on urination. That's another one. Yeah, great. Okay, so what's the complications? What are the complications? Circulation. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, glaucoma. Your eyes. You have eye problems. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Amputation. The dentist in the room is throwing out jokes. Okay. So we got a disease, we got diabetes. These are the symptoms that you would see if you had the problem. These are complicating factors that can arise from the symptoms. Obviously, there's no cure. Okay. Is poverty a disease, a symptom, a complication, or a cure? What? Very good. Wow, you hit it right on the head. So poverty is a symptom. What's the disease? Very good. All right. What's the complications? Yeah, death or probably exposure, exploitation. Death, depression. And obviously the cure is the gospel. The only reason we're putting this here is because this isn't our target. Even when we're trying to show mercy in a mercy ministry, that's not our target. Sin is the problem and gospel is the cure, okay? So we are trying to help here, but this is our real issue. We got to bring the gospel to people. So what this ministry training does, which I think is fantastic, is it says we want to help people with food, but we're trying to give people the gospel, okay? It's not one or the other. And if you slide off of one end or the other, either you become ultra-conservative and you don't care about people's needs, or you fall on the other end and you're a liberal and all you do is take care of people's needs and ditch the gospel. And we want to smack both of those together and say we want to do both, okay? But granted, the priority is on the gospel and we're not going to solve all the problems of the world, so we want to help, but we're not going to solve everything. So why does poverty exist? Because of sin, and God has sovereignly allowed sin to exist. And you know what? I mean, poverty to exist. And really, I think what poverty does is when we see poverty, it reminds us that we're in a fallen world. That's why God allows poverty to exist in some extent, is when we see that, we go, wow, we're in a fallen world, and we need to pray that Jesus will come back. So that's this section, he raises the poor. The fourth section is the gospel I preach. I'm not going to cover the gospel in this class or in this training, but I do want you to know we have uploaded to the Outreach website under local evangelism, Pastor Jim's 6-week gospel grace evangelism class. So if you want that, we have all the audio downloads, we have all the packets, we have everything. You can go through it at your own pace. So if you want to acclimate yourself to the gospel again or whatnot, that's all available online on the NorthCreek.org website. So that's section 4. The next section is called a spiritual house. A spiritual house. I'm just going to read one verse for you, and actually I probably teach this in my life stage a lot because I just think it's important because it identifies, well, what's the church about and who are the people in the church? 1 Peter 2:9 says this, but you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, holy nation, a people for God's own possession, so that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who has called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. For you once were not a people, but now you are the people of God. You had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. So we're a holy people, a holy priesthood. We're ministers, right? We're all ministers of the gospel. There's no such thing as a division between the priest and the clergy. That's a false dichotomy. We're all ministers of Christ. It's just some of us get paid and others of us don't get paid for it. So you probably get more riches in heaven than I do, okay? But anyways, we're all ministers of Christ to proclaim the excellencies of God. And so this training highlights the fact that the church is proclaiming the excellencies of God to the nations. And so that feeds into the mission of the church. The mission of the church is to make obedient disciples from all nations that worship God and proclaim the gospel until Christ returns. So that's the priority of the church. So this ministry is built on the back of proclaiming the gospel, making disciples. The next section is on being rich in mercy. I just want to highlight B under that section under being rich in mercy. It defines mercy. It says, mercy is an undeserved demonstration of love flowing from God's character through the gospel, which seeks to alleviate the suffering of others. This kind of mercy is both a command and an expectation. And what it means by that is just that, okay, God shows us, undeserving sinners, mercy. Now, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to show other people mercy? The same mercy that God showed us, we're supposed to show to other people. So it's theologically consistent of us to share mercy with other people. We were undeserving, and yet God would show us mercy, and now we have an opportunity to show mercy to others. And part of this showing mercy is it's a visualization of the gospel. When we show mercy to our community, we're showing the gospel in tangible means. We're going to tell them the gospel, and they're going to see the gospel through what we're doing. So that's being rich in mercy. The last section is gospel-centered mercy ministry. I just want to look at B. The priorities of gospel-based mercy ministry are relationships, evangelism, and discipleship. I love this. This is the bread and butter of every Christian. It should be, and this is the bread and butter of this ministry. It's relationships. We're going into homes trying to build a relationship. We want to build a relationship with the people that we're showing mercy to. Second, we want to extend the gospel to them. And third, God willing, people get saved, and then you have an opportunity to disciple people. Isn't that what the New Testament's about? Building relationships, sharing the gospel, and discipling people. So this ministry is thoroughly biblical, and they've grounded their mercy training in these things. There's one last thing. Besides, in essence, showing wanting to build relationships, do evangelism, and do discipleship, one last thing is we do want to truly help people. So we're trying to construct a means of helping people that doesn't cultivate dependence on us, doesn't proliferate harmful behavior, doesn't even suit our own charitable feelings and try to just meet some itch in us rather than truly helping other people. So that's also taken into consideration in this gospel mandate of bringing the gospel forward. At the end of the day, the training closes out with just, well, what does it mean to be faithful in ministry? It's just, if we reflect the mercy of God and the goodness of God to people, and not only through our actions, but through the gospel, that's faithfulness. So we're not looking to save everybody that we go encounter and the homes we go into, but to be faithful to God and to reflect his character of mercy and to show people the gospel. So that's kind of a summary of the Rethink Mercy training in 20 minutes. If you're like, oh, that was kind of short and brief, well, there's 6 more hours of it, so hopefully we can get the training up here, and if you're interested in that, you can sign up for that Rethink Mercy training, which we may actually have later in the year available one more time if we can have them up. So that's Rethink Mercy training.